Yeah,
I hit.
I'm recording from my brother's factory-like setting here, and
Mhm.
he has become the number one national shooter for the United States. And actually, he's got like three world records for shooting bench rest rifles more accurately than anybody else. It's pretty
Wow.
awesome.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's able to hit a quarter at 1,000 yards 5 times. That's pretty crazy.
That's insane. So we know where to go to during the zombie apocalypse, I guess. Uh,
Exactly. That's my spot right over there.
that's your spot. You got your spot already picked out.
Very cool to be on your show, man. I'm excited to actually learn a lot more about what you're doing.
Oh well, thank you. Actually, you're the subject though. Me, I am not important. I'm just a whole. You, sir, are the guest though here, Craig. So
Thank you.
thanks for joining me. Well, I wanted to start out because your name as well was mentioned and it has been attached to the inner workings of the start of a project involving the giant spider invasion. We got to talk to your
Yeah,
uh, uh, partner in crime, Dan Davies,
the ever
and
handsome Dan
the
Davies.
ever handsome and enigmatic Dan Davies. Yes, and
Absolutely.
that was great to hear kind of how the project came to fruition. But I guess I was wondering, what about you for your motivation of wanting to get involved in the giant spider
So
invasion?
you wanted the truth behind the story. Okay, I got you now. I got you now. And actually,
Are you implying
the
Dan
no,
would
no, no.
embellish? No.
Dan kind of got tied into the project because of my connection to Bill, which is
Mhm.
pretty cool. I've known Bill since the 1990s when and actually prior to that, as a kid, I learned about this filmmaker in Wisconsin. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? Oh my God, this is amazing. And not only did he make the giant spider invasion, but he made like 13 other feature films here in our state, and he did this as a living. It just kind of cracked my head wide open and actually talked to me about particular possibilities too. So
Mhm.
I think that was influential. So I had this guy living in the North Woods that I just admired, having never met him. And then in the 1990s, I worked on a film that I did called The Hunt, which was my first feature film. And you know what, Mark? As every young filmmaker, I was going to be thrust into Hollywood with that one film, and all I needed to do was get that into the Wisconsin Film Festival, and it was just going to skyrocket from there. And it's like, wow, it was going to be so amazing. It didn't skyrocket. It didn't even get accepted into the Wisconsin Film Festival. And the shame is that it actually was a kind of a good film with a little bit of heart. It wasn't without its problems, but it did have a pretty cool storyline in it and very Wisconsin based. So
Sure.
what I did is I entered it into one of Bill Rebane's festivals.
Oh, okay.
Through that process, I got a chance to meet him and talk with him and learn more about what he is and actually become not just an admirer, but actually become a friend of his. And we had talked for years and years. We've even dabbled on different projects together and
Mhm.
things of that nature. So I knew him fairly well. And recently, like right around the pandemic, they were doing a museum showcase of Bill's stuff up in Merrill. And it
Yep, I
was,
remember that. Yeah.
did you get a chance to get up there?
I did not get a chance, but I had heard
Oh,
about it that they were
dude.
putting the broadcast. Yeah, I know.
It
I couldn't
was
get up
it
there,
was
but
actually for a film fan, it was wonderful because it had some of the original artwork for the posters. It had some of the original Spider,
sure.
the one that
Hmm.
was manipulated on the crane was in there. It wasn't completely covered with fur, but it was there, and it was just like wow. Brandon Johnson, who is the museum curator up there, did a brilliant job of putting together a Bill Rebane whole wing of their museum, and it was fantastic. And Brandon, if you want to know about Bill's history, Brandon Johnson's definitely the one to go to. But I'm making this an even longer story,
No
obviously.
worries. No
Um,
worries.
with When that museum piece was happening, I had this partial script in hand,
Hmm.
and it was something that I always wanted to get to Bill because it was a sequel to the Giant Spider.
Oh,
And it was done in a very creative and different approach where it's Bill now in his, 80s going to Comic Cons and trying to get recognition for the film that he did, learning that the spiders that they thought they let loose in the woods up in Green or up in Gleason had kind of survived. And so that was sort of the impetus of the story, but ultimately was a love letter to him and what he meant to the state of Wisconsin and the creators there. And when I got back down to Appleton after that visit, I ran into Dan Davies and a handful of other filmmakers from Appleton. And Dan is like, "You need to get that made." And I'm like, So, and it's like, holy cats, this was something. But I didn't get that made. But I did get a chance to introduce Bill to Dan Davies and J.B. Thompson, who had become a good friend at that point too. And so those guys and Eric Gulbranson as well, they all three of us went up to a Tiny Tim event up in. Do you know the connection there at all?
yep, yep. Was it Bad Harvest
Blood
or Blood
Harvest, Blood
Harvest? Blood
Harvest.
Harvest.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Also
Yeah.
called Nightmare. Bill has a tendency to rename his movies and re-release them later on with a couple of changes and stuff like that.
Sure.
It's a lot of fun, and it's probably Bill's goriest movie,
Hmm.
and he's not a huge fan of the gore. In fact, Bill's not necessarily a big fan of the horror as well. He's got
Sure.
some brilliant scripts for things that are just straightforward narratives that are absolutely beautiful. That I think he would love to see them done, but he knows how, he has a limited amount of energies for the day.
Right.
But these scripts, I hope, do find a light of day someday because they're absolutely brilliant.
Hmm.
Um, so now here we are. We got a chance to go up and see the Tiny Tim thing in Gleason, Wisconsin, and right behind the bar that we were in was the ball field where
Yeah.
all the kids are running from the spiders. Do you remember
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. The Gleason Fest. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Gleason Fest thing,
Yeah.
and it was just such a great time to meet him. I was so proud to introduce Dan and JB and Eric to Bill, and he was very receptive. He gave us a lot of time, but there wasn't a lot of people there.
Hmm.
So it's like this is a shame. We want to see people. We want people to get a chance to see what's going on with your films, and so we decided to have this event in Wyowega.
Hmm.
Dude, you made it there, didn't
I
you?
was there. Yep. We
Yeah,
were
yeah.
there.
That
Yeah.
was actually we got a chance to connect really well there
Hmm.
too. That was fantastic. So getting a theater opera house full of people for Bill to get a chance to shine in front of. His daughter came up from Texas. It was really quite a wonderful event, and that was the start of everything.
Oh.
So at that point, I was talking with Bill about, Bill, this movie is actually pretty darn good, but every version that I've seen, the footage is so dark. You
Yeah.
can barely see what's going on at times, especially when you're looking at a DVD that's been
Hmm.
transferred and this and that. And so JB had there was a glitch in the video file that we had, and he sent it my way. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll fix this glitch. And so I monkeyed around with that. But then I'm like, well, what would happen if I change the luminance on the film to actually make it a little bit brighter so we can see it, bring the contrasts up in different ways? And Mark, holy cats, it looked fantastic. Honestly, it made some of that murkier or old footage look like it was 1,000, it looked
Sure.
like a
Hmm.
million bucks. And getting a chance to see the film as Bill intended it to be was just absolutely wonderful. And even fans who have been fans for a long time and seen the movie thousands of times before that were like, that was the best version of the film ever.
Hmm.
And whether or not you realize it, there was a couple of other enhancements that took place on that film. There was a meteorite
Yep.
that you see through the sky, and there was some shifting around of some explosions that Bill wasn't really super keen on in the film that we tried to enhance as well. But that, I think, kind of set Bill's mind into motion where it's like, all right, we can potentially enhance this film. But again, time is always a factor with
Yeah.
this. because right now is the 50th anniversary year for Giant
Hmm.
Spider. And actually, I think next year it's the official 50th year. I'm not
Hmm.
sure. I think it came out in 1975. So right now
Yep.
it's
Yeah.
the 50th anniversary. Um, from there, Dan and JB got this idea in their head. It's like, we want to make a shot per shot remake of the Giant
Sure.
Spider. And I'm like, wow, okay, that is pretty ambitious. But it went further than that. Not only that, we want the original director to be in charge of directing this thing. And
Sure.
I'm like, what are you trying to do? Kill the poor guy? That is a lot of work to put on
Right.
some. But we went up and we met with Bill, and Bill seemed just super excited for it. But after we drove home that night, Bill kind of realized that, man, I can't do all that
Hmm.
work. That is a ton of work. Plus, he loves much of that original piece.
Right.
It's I've combed through it so many times in the last couple of months
Sure.
that it's interesting to see just how fast that pacing is in that
Hmm.
film. Once we're here, then we're here, then we're here, then we're here. And it's just a multiple layering of story that's taking place that is absolutely riveting and paced out really well. There's nothing that lingers too long,
Right.
except for maybe a couple of scientists that are talking mumbo jumbo that we just can't understand.
Yeah, but the scientists that are talking, they keep it interesting. So I mean, even
Absolutely.
those scenes are interesting, but that's because of the talent on the screen. They keep it interesting. They aren't just reading lines. So that's those scenes are all right.
Right. And I think a good chunk of those scenes were shot in Wausau and
Hmm.
Stevens Point
Yeah,
at the campus, right?
yeah. I think the observatory. I think they shot at least some of that here. I
Oh,
think
that's really cool.
I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think yeah, I
It
think
would
they
have
shot
had
it.
to have been.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
it
it's
was
one of the only observatories around here. So I think yeah,
in
that's where
in
they shot.
Stevens Point.
Yeah, and Stevens Point, the on
Oh,
campus
that's
is where
cool.
they've got one of those star, uh, where she's giving a lesson about stars. I think that was shot in
Yeah.
Point.
Yeah, I love that. I love that a lot. And those two actors were pretty darn significant for their own time too, you know. Um, they really went on to do some big things, but prior to Spider, they were involved in some things.
Yeah,
And I think Bill had become really good friends with that main scientist. What was his name? Steve Brody, or is that his son?
I think
Or
it
no,
was
I'm
Steve
thinking,
Brody. I forgot
um,
offhand, but
but he had him in a ton of commercials before that. So that was pretty cool. But again, I'm meandering from the story as well. When we got home from that trip, and after Bill had kind of thought on it a little bit, he's like, you know what, fellas, I would like to do an enhanced version of the film where we can take some of these problem areas that I've hated for years, that have irked him for years, and we can polish them up and fix them up and tell the story a little bit more, fill in the holes that
sure.
Bill's been doing Q&As on this film for, 50 years now. And people are always like, well, hey, Mr. Rabin, why does that guy on the motorcycle just all of a sudden appear and disappear? What
Yeah,
is that
yeah.
all about? And that's a shot
Yeah.
that we very well might be looking for a metallic orange motorcycle helmet
Sure.
and reshooting some of that
Yeah.
because when that scene is in the woods, you can't see anything.
Right.
And I would love to see us enhance that scene so there's just no question. And
Hmm.
it's okay to have some questions. It really, truly is. But I think he just gets irked after a while where it's just like these plot hole points
Keep
that
coming
don't
up. Yeah, they
necessarily,
keep
yeah,
coming
they
up.
don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be plot hole points. But he just wants to fix that. And so he pulled on JB as our project manager, and he is doing a fantastic job of keeping the peace with everybody. Um, and it's hard, honestly, because I'm going to get a little bit on the sidelines here. But when you're dealing with artists, and I'm not a hypocrite, I am an artist myself. I am probably one of the most difficult people to deal with, and
Sure.
I'll admit it. But that's because I
Sure.
have such a ridiculous level of confidence in what my skill set is.
Hmm.
Um, but when you're dealing with a whole room full of people like that, it gets a little bit tricky, and the
Sure.
drama sometimes unfolds. Bill invited in a handful of writers to come onto the team. We have Donna Frankhart and Kelly Peterson, who are both brilliant writers in their own regard, and they have become kind of the writing team. I'm part of that, but I'm not part of it. So we're trying to just polish
Sure.
up what we want to happen. And I'm going to probably be working on some of the special effects, trying to get that balanced out. We've got some very talented effects people that are tied into this. Jeff Ohm, who's become a good friend, and another guy named Zach Hendrickson, I believe.
Hmm.
A ridiculously talented guy. He's like, holy crap, we're overusing. This guy here could be doing his own thing. We don't need to
Sure.
worry about him. So those are some of the big names that we've got involved. And I think everybody would like to have some type of a cameo appearance. But ultimately, what my job kind of became was to take Bill's script and idea, and he really liked one of the characters that I developed. It's a character named Todd Tipman with a tip, Tippmann. But I think Bill has just misinterpreted it as it's been going on. So it's become Todd Titman and Todd Lloyd Titman. It'll be really curious to see what the name is by the time the movie happens. Although the character is I think this really nice balance. I looked at the film, I'm like, what could be that narrative line that could kind of follow through here?
Sure.
Ultimately, a reporter could be really good, and especially a reporter who at one time kind of shined a little bit as far as he was
Right.
a war correspondent. He was kind of important in his day, and now he's finding himself stuck in this little bum hole of a town in Rhinelander, the smallest news station in the world, because his brother-in-law owns it, or
Sure.
his
Sure.
uncle owns it or something.
Hmm.
So he's a little bitter for that. But now all of a sudden, as something's actually happening, he's not just interviewing people that are taking pony rides at Gleason. He's actually out there and seeing something happen that would be so incredible and exciting for him to capture. And he's like, the camera guy's like, no, we got to run. We got to save our lives. Like, if you run, I will break your neck with that camera. Get over here. We got to shoot this. But the thing is, too, is to try to think about, well, why didn't Bill put that in the original film?
Yeah.
Because there wasn't a lot of on-the-spot news reporters
Sure.
at that time in 1975.
Hmm.
In order for you to kind of have a remote truck, you had to have a microwave dish on the top of your van that would send the signal back to the studio, and you had to be hooked by cables up to that van in order for it to work.
Right.
So there was a whole different line, and trying to keep that connection. To me, it would be, and I don't know if this is going to work out or not, but this is something that we're trying to balance out, is to have Dan's character, who is Todd Tipman, trying to get these interviews, or trying to get the spider. It's like, come on, Joey, get the camera, get it over here. I can't. We don't have any more cable. And it's like, but it's right over there. You can't see it. And it's so he doesn't quite get the shots he wants.
Sure.
And they have to go on remote recording. So when you did that, you had to have a special extra box to record that footage on.
Oh yeah.
And so that he's got all this stuff on that box. It's like, yes, I've got it. This is my Pulitzer Prize right here. And only to have it destroyed at the end by something. Oh, would that be poetic justice? And what story? And again, our job is to take Bill's lines and interpretations, and he wants it to be bigger, scarier, and campier. And so those three things, if we can kind of make that movie happen that way, I think it would be absolutely glorious and a testament to Bill. Ultimately, that's what my biggest goal is because I admire the heck out of that guy.
Hmm.
And he is sometimes difficult to get along with. I've had to apologize to Bill numerous times
Sure.
for overstepping boundaries all the time. And but I think it's because we're both creators and we both see things with a certain specificity that it's hard for us to erase the things and the potential that we see in our heads. And it's like, oh, but that would be so good if we did this. Yeah, but that won't make sense. But still it could make sense.
Yeah, that can. When you get a number of creatives and you have a large group of talented folks, it can be tough, especially with the group that you have. Everybody has kind of done their own project, and many have been in the director's chair, like yourself. You know,
Mhm.
they've played all the parts, and so, like you said, you have a lot of moving parts, and I can see the challenge of kind of hurting cats occasionally, or maybe stepping over one another. Not intentionally or with
Right,
malice, but just naturally as creatives. And that can be,
right.
I mean, you know, we run into that, nothing quite like that. But when I'm doing reviews and doing, roundtables and that, we can get like that sometimes with very spirited discussions on
Oh,
what's
oh
right
yeah.
or wrong with a film, and you're very certain about how you feel, and occasionally that could get spirited, all friendly but spirited, and yeah. But no, that sounds like a great, and it sounds almost like, now that you're describing it, it finally clicked with me after thinking of what you were just describing. And Dan, I'm like, oh, you're giving the giant spider invasion the American version of Godzilla treatment of inserting the of inserting reporter to help connect some of the scenes that may not have worked
Yeah,
for
yeah.
an audience.
And, and Mark, we've also talked about the Star Wars analogy
Hmm.
too, where Lucas put out re-releases of his three first movies with like X amount of additional footage.
Right. Yeah.
And some of the fan base were like, awesome, awesome. Some of the fan base were, what are you doing? You're ruining the original. And you know what? From what we're seeing on some of the feedback that we're seeing on Facebook or
Sure.
whatever, we're seeing both of those sides as well.
Hmm.
Some fans are like, how dare you change the original footage? The thing that's different is that we've got Bill's blessing.
Right.
Not no, we don't got Bill's blessing. We're doing Bill's work.
Work. Yeah.
We're not changing this for our own egos and stuff.
Hmm.
We're changing this kind of for Bill. Now, with that said, we want to salt and pepper some of our own things in there.
Of course.
Um,
Sure.
like for
Uh,
me, there's a scene where if we have there's a certain joke that Bill wanted to have in the film about Gilligan's Island, and it's a funny joke, but it's kind of maybe a little too cute. So we
mm.
massaged it a little bit and enhanced it with like what would be a period comic book from 1975
Oh
that
yeah.
would make fanboys fill their pants, especially if somebody uses it to kill a spider. And and there was an issue of the Hulk that came out
Sure.
in 1975, which was Hulk 181.
Mm.
And as a comic collector myself and a comic maker, that's one of my holy grails. I want to find one of those sometime because seriously, Mark, if that is in perfect condition, that's $14,000. That comic book.
Wow.
It's the first appearance of Wolverine,
Right.
and if our deputy is reading that at one point, and just the camera glances over it, so it's not necessarily hanging on it by any means.
Sure.
It's just a side thing. But then when he sees a spider roll and he rolls it up and just smash and then throws the thing in the garbage, there's going to be fanboys all over the place that are going to be filling their pants, and I just love that because I know that I would be if I saw that
Sure.
too. So little teasing things like that, and each of us, the Kelly and Donna are going to be bringing in some different things that I can't bring to it.
Sure.
One of the things that they were working on is a scene, and there was such beautiful writing. It was actually poetic and more of something that I would suggest going into a novel than into a movie script.
Sure.
But
Sure.
but I can't write like that. I kind
Hmm.
of write a little bit more direct and a little more punchy, and I think that's the way that I've learned how to write
Sure.
movie
Hmm.
scripts and things before. And by God, I have produced a ton of them. So that's kind of one of the things I bring to the table too. And
Yeah.
I even have two movies that have played, or well, one movie that played last year in your festival,
Yes.
The Inheritance, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah. The Inheritances was really enjoyable. That was a big crowd pleaser, and yeah, I know you've got a couple out there now on the festival circuit. They're actually on our judging committee. The results haven't come in yet, but
Ooh,
I,
ooh, ooh.
not yet. It's still a judge, but I did get to see The Last Witch in Wisconsin up
Oh,
at
that's a great one.
the Night of Horror of Internet, a Night of Horror International Film Festival up in Eau Claire. I got a chance to see it
Oh,
there
that's a perfect place for that.
with Dean Bertram, who I've come to know once I discovered that fest. I was like, how did I miss that this fest was up here? And it was because he had put the Midwest Weird Fest on up there, but he hadn't done the Horror Fest. It was always in Australia until COVID, and that kind of had him move it to Eau Claire the last couple of years. He brought it over from Australia, and that's when I heard of it a couple of years ago. And now I've attended the last 2 years, had a blast, seen some great stuff, some world premieres, and got to see, yeah, your short of The Last Witch in Wisconsin. So, and that was a lot of fun to see in a crowd on the big screen, and
Well,
that and
and
that
that
that was a lot of fun.
that was shot by Daniel Wheeler, who is
Mhm.
a brilliant artist on top of a filmmaker. He's just starting out as a filmmaker. I
Mhm.
think that was like one of his first films. The second one that he did is going to blow the socks off of that one. I've seen some footage from it, and he has
Mhm.
Nate Haben, who is an absolutely star, a star of a cinematographer,
Mhm.
shooting for him. And it's about this guy who's kind of going through some family issues, but he finds this fortune telling head in an attic. And dude, it's already that's a great premise right there. So
That's an
getting a
awesome
chance to
premise. Yeah.
see, yeah, getting a chance to see what everybody is doing, and that would be another one. That would be a great one for Oshkosh too. I don't think he's going to have it ready for this year, but eventually for sure. And for me, Mark, the one thing that I like horror that because it gets you on the edge of your seat. It makes you just kind of tense and
Sure.
nervous,
Hmm.
builds up all the muscles in your body. And then I love to have that release with the humor. So
Hmm.
most of my stuff always has this little humorous twist to it. And some horror fests aren't fans of that, where they
Yeah,
like it to be straight up gore and blood and scary.
it can be a struggle. I know we've had discussions amongst, and I've been involved in a film festival one way, shape, or form since I've been covering indie films almost for the
Excellent.
last 13 years. I helped out Rich Peterson when he had the Madison Horror Film Festival. There was the Madtown Film Festival the last 2 years, and whatever film festivals in Oshkosh, I've been either just in the audience interviewing people or eventually on judging committees in that whatever form that festival's on. So I've been, I'm no stranger to a film festival judging, and it has been discussed many times on many different fests that I've been at of what is horror. What should we consider horror? Should we allow this in? Do we want to go all serious and scary? And I think you limit yourself a little bit if you are choosing, well, we just want the best with the scariest stuff. And then you're like, well, this one's really funny and creative. Yeah, it's not exactly horror, but it's got horror elements, but it's got a lot of familiar faces in it and it's entertaining. And then, there's some of that debate uh, so I get that. And I understand that when you say that, because there are some horror fests out there that strictly, nope, we got to get the scares and the gore, and it's got to have a high production value or we won't even look at it. And I'm like, I've always been of the, if it's entertaining, you can forgive some production mishaps or production
Amen. Amen.
weaknesses, because at the end of the day, it's meant to entertain. So,
Absolutely.
the one thing that I will say that is a stickler for me is make sure you have good audio. I don't even care if your visuals
Oh,
aren't that good, but
yeah.
please just have good audio. If nothing
Yeah, and
else.
and that's been something that has been touted to me ever since I first picked up the very first camera. The film that we sent to you recently has got
Mm,
like 14 different filmmakers from the Appleton area tied to it,
sure.
including all of the names that I mentioned. My buddy
Mhm.
Tom Thorne was one of the producers for that, and we shot it at his house on this cell phone,
Oh,
on this
nice.
cell phone. And Mark, I intentionally did that so that people can realize, a lot of times you hear Well, 28 years later
Hmm.
was shot on
Yeah,
iPhones. It was, but only certain parts of it were.
right,
And they had special lenses adhered to it that probably cost a couple $1,000 each. So there's a lot of things that come to that. It's not just they're shooting it on an iPhone, they're shooting it on an iPhone with a lot of additional things to it.
right.
This was shot completely on an iPhone, and
Mhm.
the picture at times were like when you're shooting towards a light source,
Yeah.
you get this artifacting that comes in, and that was something that you couldn't avoid. And I have a special cameo in the film reflected in the windows. So
I did
that's
catch, I caught the one
yeah.
reflection. Yeah. But
There's
that's,
like there's like more than one, unfortunately. And I
yeah,
didn't
you know,
and again, I didn't necessarily feel that it deserved to go through all of those changes. But the one thing I wish I would have done, and I had purchased like a $400 jack that would you could put microphones on everybody that you needed
oh,
to.
sure. Hmm.
And it's like I had an hour to learn how to use it, and I just said screw it. And I thought that it wasn't windy, but it turned out to be a little bit of a windy night. Even when you're shooting, trying to get everything done, it would pick up some of that wind audio, and I'm just like, oh, that's extremely hard to get rid of.
Oh, wind
There
audio. Yeah,
are some
absolutely. Yeah.
there
Yeah,
are some
no.
audio issues with the film, but it's
They're
it's a
minor though.
comedy.
They're minor though. I didn't notice too much with it. I mean, it was,
That's that's because I blasted the soundtrack so loud in time.
we'll cover it
but
up.
but
Yeah.
again, it
Yeah.
was it was ultimately a comedy, but
Mhm.
like you talked about, it goes into that horror realm to kind of become this different thing and then back out. And those are the journeys I like to take. A good drama has comedy in it. A good drama has horror in it. It
Yeah.
has, a lot of engagement of the mind. And like you talked about, if the story is engaging, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to spend $500,000 on a 5-minute short film.
Right.
I've seen 5-minute short films that people have spent, a year's wages on. And I'm like, wow, that looks great, but there's no substance there.
Right. There's no story. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, like Dan was saying as well when we talked to him, you know, the old Alfred Hitchcock thing that Bill Rebane follows is the three things important to a movie are
Story,
story,
story.
story, and story. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
true, you know, I've noticed that over the years as well covering it. I always say the screenplay is the backbone. You know, it's one of those things where especially some of the big budget Hollywood stuff I go see and I'm like, yeah, this is all great, but like especially horror, because on one hand, it's great. Horror renaissance for a fan like me. The last 8, 10 years, we've gotten more horror wide release than I've remember, you know, in the last 15 before that. It's just been an explosion of horror, which is great, but now they're starting to make these things that, oh, it'll just be horror. We can toss it out there. And you look at it and you go, that horror had no rules. One of the
Right.
keys, well, like, you know, one of the keys for horror films is you got to have at least some rules. You can play maybe a little with it, but give us some rules of how things work within this world, and then we're in and we accept it. But if we go, wait, why'd that do that now and not those rules? And
Yeah.
so, and that's because they don't have maybe a full script. They might even just taken it from a treatment. And
Oh
you
Lord.
know, I would rather have a film that maybe isn't quite big of a budget, but has a really interesting story and some creative talent. I'll take that over a big glossy horror film that basically ignores everything and just says, "Oh, it's horror, so you know, we're fine. We don't need
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
do
Or they
that."
disrespect the fans in many ways through that.
Yeah.
Did you see Sinners at all in the
Oh,
theater?
I love Sinners.
I thought that one was wonderful myself. And
It's
and that's an example of where we can go with this.
right.
And seeing some of these directors that are bringing legitimate horror films
Hmm.
to the big screen as not just popcorn candy. Oh yeah, let's get scared, but actually being engaging stories. I want to see us get back to the days when Planet of the Apes meant more than just a bunch of monkeys running around on the screen. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I
Where it's
know
like
that. Yeah.
Planet of the Apes is not a movie about monkeys. It's a movie about racism when you get
Hmm.
to the guts of it. And honestly, I don't want to get too off the rails here, but I've got a script that I'm working on that's a comedy,
Hmm.
a road comedy with two brothers that are both on the opposite side of the political spectrum.
Whoo,
That for a second.
that could get spicy real quick.
Absolutely, absolutely. And but the thing I want to do with it, which is why it's probably not been written yet, because it's so freaking hard to figure out, is I'd like to see both sides being able to see the other side's perspective.
Hmm.
And and do it in a really humorous way so that people can kind of not feel threatened as they watch the film, but actually come out of it realizing that we're human and we need to come together, not push each other away. And last night, Mark, I saw Superman on the big
Yeah.
screen.
Hmm.
And I was expecting to enjoy it, and I did. I did. It's not without its problems. I mean, the thing that drives me crazy about superhero movies isn't the fact that they can lift buildings. It's the fact that buildings would, if you stop a building that's coming down and falling on you like this, if you stop it right here like that, it's going to crumble
Yeah.
around you because of the inertia and the physics of the situation and the building materials that they're using. And they never account for that. It's like, oh, he stops it and lifts it up. Come on, that's not how that would work. And I
Well,
wish
that,
that they could keep the physics right of some of that stuff, and I'd be total. I wouldn't have a single complaint. Well, yeah, but then a bunch of people would die as that building fell. Yeah, you're probably right. So maybe they should cut to another
well,
scene.
that one did crumble around him, but it paused for enough for the plot for her to drive out before it
Exactly.
crumbled around
Exactly.
versus just automatically crumbling. No, actually, I'm glad you brought up Superman because
Cool.
it's interesting. If you go by Rotten Tomatoes, a lot of critics love it, which I know, but I know a lot of people out there who are devout Superman fans, and some people love it, think it's just the best thing since sliced bread, and then there's ones that have despised it to the point of calling for either guns firing or just totally refusing. And this is why I love film, is because everybody can watch a movie and get something different out of it.
Oh, dude, I've
So
got a story for you.
so it's one of those things where neither side is exactly like completely wrong because it's how they're interpreting what they see, what they brought into the theater as expectations, consciously and subconsciously, what your life experiences are, how you see Superman supposed to be. So when you take such an iconic character like this, you're going to have divisiveness just as much as you do on the political spectrum of having two different
Yeah.
sides. You're going to have that with nearly any fandom. We've discovered that nowadays. You know,
Well, and I think you're talking about one of the biggest ones there,
Mhm.
honestly, because how can you imagine how difficult that would be to keep that film as iconic as that character deserves without injecting too much of yourself into it. And right now, it's fascinating looking at some of the woke messaging that's coming along with Superman. And I saw a thing today that just made me nuts, where Trump's head is on Superman's body, and they're using
Yeah,
his lines for it. It's like, God, can't somebody get sued for that? It just seems
it's
so, so
I saw
crazy.
just leave it alone. But I saw that and people were complaining about it though, Superman being woke, and I'm like, where have you been for the last 80 years? Where have you
Yeah.
been? That was just like people during the pandemic. A prime example was a number of people suddenly complain about how the band Rage Against the Machine. Oh, when did they get so political? And a lot of us who enjoy the music go, you know the name of the band, right? what
Wow.
machine do you think it's going to be?
Oh,
And
that's
so
funny.
people discovering some of this stuff. And again, I don't say, because me personally too, I'm not, no one's saying that you have to completely like something. Uh, you
Oh,
know,
absolutely.
everybody has their own tastes and it comes to indie film too. There's some people who can look past what I usually call the smaller budget aesthetics or the lower budget aesthetics. There's some
Mhm.
people that can look past that and see the creativity and the art or enjoyment in it. And then there's some people who just can't. I don't fault them for that. That's just
Man.
them. But I think if you can look past some of that, like with the giant spider invasion, how people are still talking about that film 50 years later. We just covered it on our podcast, and there's still interest in it versus the best picture from 1970.
No kidding.
How many, where's the more devout fan base? Where is the people who are watching it over and over again? And you'll find more numbers in possibly those lower budget films, those ones that, I mean, we've got a remake of Toxic Avenger coming out starring an A-list actor, Peter Dinklage.
Oh yeah.
Words I would have never thought I heard myself say ever.
Is Peter Dinklage actually playing the monster when
Yes,
it changes?
yeah,
That's the part that blew my mind.
he's playing
'Cause I was
Toxie.
expecting, that's amazing. That is very crazy. But I wanted to kind of touch on a point that you had here, but
Sure.
also something else that I forgot to mention
Yeah.
is my background in film festivals as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, did you ever make it to a Wildwood Film Festival?
I did not, because when I had learned about the Wildwood Festival and I was getting into it, I was going to get up there one year, and then it ended up not happening because of events and of me getting to it finally.
Okay,
But I knew of it through John Pata and the others who had talked about it at
Oh yeah, John Pata's
Oshkosh.
a brilliant filmmaker.
Oh yeah,
Um, the Wildwood Film Festival actually started going way back to the first part of our discussion here. The Hunt wasn't getting seen anywhere.
sure,
So it's like, all right, well, how are we going to do this? Well, let's make our own film festival. And so it had very self-centered and self-serving origins,
sure,
but the Wildwood Film Festival grew into one of the best film festivals in the state that showcased Wisconsin film talent. That's
right,
the one thing that every film that we did for 19 years, we had every film that we had in that festival was a piece of Wisconsin, had some type of a connection, whether it was written here in Appleton, which we had one of those that was written by a guy in Appleton and shot in Australia.
oh wow,
That was really crazy, or completely shot in Appleton, like most of the stuff I do, or whether or not the filmmaker was from wherever and went to
mm-hmm.
school in Milwaukee for learning how to become a filmmaker. All of these films had that one thing in connection. When the pandemic hit us, it was the last year of our festival, and it was the week before the pandemic shut the world down. So if you remember that time where
Oh yeah,
everybody was like, boom, everything's done, it was the week before that, and a lot of people were nervous about even going anywhere.
mm-hmm.
So we've got a ton of t-shirts left, ladies and gentlemen. If anybody wants, a 2020 or whatever year that was, Wildwood
Yeah,
Film Festival t-shirt, I would love to see us come back to that or get back to that. We've just got so many different directions that Jason Buss and Tom Thorne and I have gone since then to, we were at one point the original three founders of the festival and did the lion's share of all that work. But it was really respected throughout the or not the United States, but at least in the state.
mm-hmm.
And I'd love to see us come back to something like that, because every festival here has their Wisconsin's own category,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't necessarily have it just 100% dedicated to Wisconsin.
Sure,
That's really what set us apart with that. But again, when you talk about people and their tastes for film and this and that, I've got a story for you that just summarizes it so well. It was a learning experience for me. I was a volunteer for the Sundance Film Festival for 4 years.
okay,
And got a chance to see behind the scenes on a lot of that stuff. I was Daniel Radcliffe's bodyguard, for crying out loud, at one point, just because they needed a big guy to stand
sure,
by a doorway. And I had to just kind of hold off these little girls by, hey, no further, you can't come. But I want to see Daniel. Nope, I'm sorry, ma'am, you can't come in. And I got a chance. The community shuttles there are how everybody gets around. So it's
sure,
a really great way that you just jump on one of the buses and boom, it takes you to the next venue. And there's like 7 or 8 venues in Park City.
mm-hmm.
And so just sitting there and being a fly on the wall and listening to people. And there were 2 women that were sitting kind of in front of me, and a third one that was further up. and I could hear these two women talking. I don't think they knew each other. Not a single one of them knew each other, but the two in the seat were talking about the films that they really liked for the film festival. Oh, I loved seeing this one. I love this one. And the other one turned to the other lady and said, "Hey, the one thing I'll tell you is don't go and see this movie." And she described it. Don't go and see this one. It was terrible. And that woman, the third woman, turned around and said, "Are you kidding me? That was my favorite movie of the entire festival."
Mm-hmm.
Mark, that tells us a lot about tastes and why there are things out there that might not be our cup of tea, but we can totally appreciate. That's the thing is I think you and I would both agree with this is that we can both watch a movie that's not necessarily considered that good and still walk away with something from it
Oh yeah.
and still learn something from that. And who knows, it might become a favorite of ours, not necessarily because it was brilliantly shot or brilliantly acted, but because something that was in there sparked our soul. It touched us as an artist, or it touched us as a muse, as a receiver, and all of a sudden, boom, God, that was such a good movie. I really, really admire what that was. That's what happened right in front of my eyes, and I'm like, I'm not going to forget that. And that tells me a lot about when we're judging a film festival and we're picking out what should be in there and what shouldn't be in there, we would intentionally pull in pieces into Wildwood that would make people go, "Wow, there's no way in heck I could make that. That is way beyond my capacity. How much money was spent on that? Wow." But then we'd also have a piece in there that would make them go, "You know what? My son and I could make a film like that.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that we could do." And it gets people thinking and gets people inspired and gets people out there to make some of their own art. Because I preach a lot to my students that we all have stories inside of us that are worth telling, that only we can tell. And if we don't do it, it's never going to get done. So get them out there.
Get them out there. Make your damn movie, as Lloyd would
Amen.
say.
As Lloyd Kaufman would say.
Well, I think that would be a great note to end this on, Craig.
I hear you.
This has been a great conversation. Always fun talking to you, sir.
Absolutely.
You got the Giant Spider Invasion project, which again is a prime example of tastes and how they can change over the years and appreciation. And yeah, and your shorts that are out there now, I've gotten a chance to see both of them. I enjoyed both of them quite a bit for on various levels. And so, yeah, I thank you very much. Where can people keep up? Is there a place or a website or somewhere they can keep up with your projects at all, or just on social media? Shill whatever you'd like, sir.
You know what, Mark? I need to get way better at that. I've and honestly, it's because the last 10 years of my life I've been truly dedicated to teaching the kids at the Boys and Girls Club of Green Bay and through the Bay and Lakes region. That's what my job has been. And I get to make movies with these kids. I get to make comics. I get to make art. So it's like getting them to realize their own creativity has been wonderful. However, within the last couple years, I've realized, you know what, especially after pandemic, time ain't slowing down for anybody.
No.
And honestly, and if I don't get to some of my own projects, they're never going to be gotten to, I guess. Sure. I've got a fairy tale that needs to be written, and I might want to shop that script around because I think it would be real fascinating for people to see because it deals with creativity, artistry, grief, trauma, how you get over things. It's got a lot of very symbolic points to it, set in a world that looks like it's medieval. However, every once in a while you walk past a bunch of crumbling computers. So when does this take place? This is kind of an interesting concept. And we can talk about some of these on a future podcast, Mark, but trying to figure out, where to balance our world as a creator. How do we responsibly teach kids about AI? Mm-hmm. And how that tool is going to be utilized.
Oh yeah, that's a whole nother conversation.
Amen. So if anybody wants to find out more about me, become a Facebook buddy. Honestly, that's the best way of doing it.
Awesome. Well, I'll put a link to that in the description of this podcast. Thank you so much, Craig. Always a pleasure. Folks, support indie cinema. And yeah, go out there, make your own damn movie. And you never know,
Yeah.
it may show at the Sawdust City Fright Fest or, whenever, if ever,
Wildwood.
the Wildwood Fest
Yeah,
ever
that would be
comes
awesome.
back.
Let's bring that back.
Let's do that, sir.